The CEO sold him a junk garage for $1,000. 6 months later, he turned it into an empire. Part 1. The Deal Nobody Wanted. The wind cut through Elena Hartwell's black coat like a blade. She stood in the middle of what her legal team had officially classified as distressed commercial property. A snow-covered lot in the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio, filled with rusted machinery, crushed cars, and 3 deteriorating warehouse buildings that looked like they hadn't seen human life since 2009. She was the CEO of Hartwell Industries. She had a board meeting in 4 hours. She had a Forbes interview tomorrow morning. She did not have time to be standing in a junkyard at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. Nobody's buying this, she asked her attorney, Marcus, without looking at him. Marcus adjusted his scarf. We've had it listed for 14 months. 11 showings, 0 offers. The environmental assessment alone scared most buyers off. The cleanup cost estimate is around $40,000 minimum, and the structures are technically condemned. Elena exhaled. A cloud of breath disappeared into the cold air. The property had come to her company through a defaulted loan, collateral she never wanted and couldn't unload. It was bleeding, holding costs every month. Small numbers in the grand machinery of Hartwell Industries, but still, it annoyed her. She hated loose ends. Sell it, she said. Whatever we can get, $1,000. 500. I don't care. Get it off the books. That was when she heard the crunch of gravel behind her. She turned. A man was walking toward them across the lot, his boots breaking through a thin crust of snow with each step. He wore a worn denim jacket layered over a gray thermal, dark jeans that had seen better years, and an expression that was entirely unreadable. Calm, almost too calm, like a man who had learned a long time ago not to show what he was thinking. He was maybe 35, dark hair, strong jaw, the kind of face that belonged in a different story than this one. Are you the owner? He asked, looking directly at Elena. She blinked. People didn't usually address her before addressing her attorneys. I am, she said. I heard you are selling. He looked past her at the warehouses, at the rusted hulks of machinery, at the burned-out BMW sitting near the back fence. He looked at all of it the way a chess player looks at a board, not seeing what is there, but what could be. We are, Marcus said, stepping forward slightly. Though I should advise you that this property comes with significant. I'll take it, the man said. Silence. Marcus blinked. You haven't heard the terms. $1,000, the man said. Cash, today. I'll sign whatever you need. Elena stared at him. In 20 years of business, she had negotiated with hedge fund managers and hostile boards and foreign ministers. She had never, not once, been caught completely off guard, the way she was caught off guard right now. You haven't done an inspection, she said carefully. Don't need one. The structures are condemned. I know. There is a $40,000 environmental cleanup requirement from the city. I know that too. She studied his face, looking for the angle. Every buyer had an angle. But his eyes were steady and patient, and entirely unafraid of her scrutiny. What is your name? She asked. Nathan Cole. She reached out her hand. Elena Hartwell. He shook it once, firm and brief. I know who you are. She almost smiled. Then you know, I don't make bad deals. With respect, Nathan said quietly. This is the best deal you've made all year. You just don't know it yet. Part 2. The Man Behind the Dirt. What Elena didn't know, what she had no reason to know, was that Nathan Cole had grown up 3 miles from that junkyard. He had spent his childhood summers running through lots exactly like this one, following his father, a mechanic named Roy Cole who could fix anything with 4 wheels and a prayer. His father had dreamed of owning his own shop. He died at 52, still dreaming, still working someone else's floor. Nathan had carried that dream like a stone in his chest for 11 years. He had spent those years building toward it quietly. He'd gotten a welding certification at 22, Started doing salvage work at 24. Learned restoration and custom fabrication in his late 20s. He'd spent 3 years in Detroit working under a legendary automotive restorer named Frank Diaz, absorbing everything. By the time he came back to Columbus, he had skills that the market desperately wanted. He just didn't have a space. He'd looked at commercial properties for 2 years. Everything was out of reach. Small shops rented for $3,000 a month minimum. Purchase prices were laughable. He had $40,000 saved. Every dollar he'd scraped and protected, and nowhere near enough. And then, through a contractor friend, he heard a rumor. Hardwell Industries was desperate to unload a condemned junkyard on the east side. Nobody wanted it. Nathan drove out on a Sunday morning alone. He walked the entire property for 3 hours. What he saw wasn't a junkyard. He saw 3 warehouse structures, condemned and, yes, but structurally repairable. The bones were solid. Old steel frame construction, the kind they didn't build anymore. He saw 12,000 square feet of potential floor space. He saw a perimeter fence that just needed new chain link. He saw a drainage system that was blocked but not broken. He saw 15 acres of land in a neighborhood that was quietly, slowly beginning to gentrify. New coffee shops on the main road 2 blocks north. A craft brewery under construction. A mural going up on the old bank building. He saw what it could become. He drove home and called the listing broker Monday morning. Part 3. 6 months. Month 1. Nathan Cole moved into the property on a Wednesday in January with a sleeping bag, a portable heater, a toolbox, and a plan written in a notebook he'd been filling for 2 years. He spent the first 3 weeks on the environmental cleanup himself, removing contaminated soil in carefully documented sections, coordinating with a city inspector he'd gotten to know through his contractor contacts, filing every piece of paperwork precisely right. The inspector, a quiet man named Gerald, told him later that he'd never seen anyone navigate the cleanup process faster or more efficiently. Total cleanup cost, $22,000, underestimate. Nathan had researched every possible shortcut that was still legal and safe. Month 2. He began structural repairs on Warehouse A, the largest building, 60 feet wide and 200 feet long. He did the welding himself. He hired 2 laborers from the neighborhood for general work. He sourced reclaimed materials wherever possible, driving 2 hours to a demolition auction and returning with enough lumber and steel to finish the roof repairs for a fraction of retail cost. He also filed for 3 permits simultaneously: commercial repair, small business operation, and a specialty permit for automotive restoration services. He knew the system. He moved fast inside it. Month 3. He started taking clients. Not many. He wasn't ready for many, but word traveled fast in the restoration community. A collector in Dublin, Ohio, a suburb north of Columbus, brought him a 1967 Ford Mustang that had been sitting in a barn for 30 years. Completely seized engine, rusted quarter panels, interior destroyed. Nathan worked on that Mustang every night for 6 weeks. When he was done, it looked like the day it left the factory, except better. The collector stood in the warehouse and literally went silent for 30 seconds before he found words. He paid Nathan $18,000 for the restoration. He told every person he knew. Month 4. The phone didn't stop ringing. Nathan hired 4 people: a fabricator, a paint specialist, a general mechanic, and an office coordinator named Patricia, who had been laid off from a dealership and immediately understood exactly what Nathan was building. Patricia set up the booking system, the intake process, the client communications. She told Nathan on her 3rd day that he needed a website, a logo, and a waiting list. By the end of month 4, there was a waiting list. Month 5. Warehouse B came online. Nathan converted it into a detailing and finishing studio, temperature-controlled, professionally lit, spotlessly clean. It looked like something from a magazine. Clients started asking to bring their cars in just to photograph them in the space. He also signed his first corporate contract, a classic car dealer in Cincinnati who needed a reliable restoration partner for high-value inventory. It was a $200,000 annual agreement. Nathan sat alone in the warehouse that night, long after everyone had gone home, and looked at the signed contract in his hands for a very long time. Month 6. Cole Automotive Works employed 11 people. The revenue projection for year 1 was $1.4 million. 3 publications had reached out for interviews, 2 automotive magazines, and 1 Columbus Business Journal, and Warehouse C was nearly finished. Nathan had saved it for something specific, a community training program, free automotive education for young people from the neighborhood, built on a partnership with the local high school. His father had never had anyone to teach him the business side of the work he loved. Nathan intended to change that for as many people as he could. Part 4. The Return. Elena Hartwell read the Columbus Business Journal on a Saturday morning over coffee. From Condemned to Crown. How one man turned a $1,000 junkyard into Columbus's most talked about restoration shop. She read the entire article twice. Then she sat back in her chair and laughed. A real laugh, the kind that surprised her. The kind she hadn't heard come out of herself in a long time. She had her assistant track down a number. She called it herself. No intermediary. The way she'd done things before she'd had a team of people to insulate her from the world. Nathan answered on the second ring. "Mr. Cole," she said. "Elena Hartwell." A pause. "Miss Hartwell. I read the article. I saw your company in the acknowledgments section," he said. "I made sure they included it. You made this possible." "You made this possible," she said. "I just sold you a pile of rust." "You sold me what I needed," he said. "Most people looked at that lot and saw the end of something. I looked at it and saw the beginning." Elena was quiet for a moment. Outside her window, Columbus glittered in the winter sun. "I'd like to come see it," she said, "if that is all right." "The door's always open," Nathan said. "Come on a weekday, I'll show you what we're building." She came on a Thursday. She walked through all 3 warehouses. She watched Nathan's team work. Calm, focused, skilled, proud of what they were doing. She stood in the finishing studio and ran her hand along the flank of a restored 1972 Chevelle that looked like liquid midnight. She stood in Warehouse C and listened as Nathan explained the community program to her. His voice changed when he talked about it, became quieter and more serious, more real. "Your father," she said, remembering a line from the article. "Yeah," he said simply. She looked at him, really looked at him, the way she looked at things when she was deciding what they were worth, and understood that this man had never once needed her to believe in what he was doing. He just needed one door to open. She had opened it without even knowing. "The best deal I made all year," she said quietly, echoing his words back to him. Nathan Cole smiled. The first real smile she'd seen from him. It changed his whole face. "Told you," he said. 6 months earlier, he had walked across a snow-covered lot toward a woman who held the key to something she didn't know was priceless. She had sold it for $1,000. He had turned it into everything. The end. Golden Heart Stories, Vertical Bar Columbus, Ohio. Vertical Bar Cole Automotive Works, where every broken thing finds its way home.